All right, so this video is going to be the second in my RxJava and RxAndroid course on my website, and also this is going to be posted on YouTube. In this video, we're going to talk about observables and observers. So my goal is to give you kind of an introduction into observables and observers before we get into the real content of the course, start looking at operators and that kind of stuff. So to start this off, the first step is getting the dependencies, which I covered in the previous video, but just to kind of reiterate, you're going to want the RxJava dependency. So for example, this is the one I'm using, and the RxAndroid dependency. So that's going to be that one right there. Once you have those, add to your build.gradle file, sync it, and go to Introduction to Observables and Observers. That's going to be this lecture right here. So in general, basically, as you can see from the introduction here, my goal is to create an observable, so show you how to create observables, apply a operator to the observable. And I know you don't know what an operator is at this point, but I just want to show you the overall process of generally every RxJava transaction, because they follow the same kind of pattern. So, and then designate what thread you want to do the work on, what thread you want to post the work on, so the results of the work that's done, and then how to subscribe an observer to the observable to get that emitted response, because that's what it's all about. It's about observables and observers, emitting results and viewing results. That's kind of that's kind of what this is. That's the name of the game. That's what this is all about. So feel free to walk through this example and read the article if you want, but I'm kind of just going to jump into Android Studio now and take you through it. So whoops, I didn't want to show you this build.gradle. The only two that you need for this video is these two right here. Ignore all the rest. Whoops, ignore all the rest of the dependencies. That's for kind of other lectures for now. I wasn't going to show you this, the build.gradle, because I didn't want to confuse you, but it's too late for that now. So the only two you need is these two right here, RxJava and RxAndroid. Other than that, the other ones are used for different lectures. So I'm just going to kind of go through the code that I have in here already. All this code is going to be available on here. So if you want to get that and you want to save yourself some typing, go to the article itself. So let's go back to Android Studio here. So first of all, the object class that I'm going to be using to model the data in this lecture is this. It's the task object class. There's a string for the description, a boolean named isComplete, and an integer representing the priority. So it's a task that has a description, a boolean that describes whether it's complete or not, and then an integer representing its priority, the priority of the task. Then I have another class named dataSource. And inside this class, it just creates a short array list of those task objects. So inside here, I have 5 task objects, just given a description, given a boolean, whether it's complete or not, and then given a priority. This is the data set that we're going to use for this lecture. If we take a look at activity main, not much in here. Basically, it's just a seek bar and a text view. The text view is not going to be used in this lecture, but the seek bar is going to be used to demonstrate how you can freeze the UI and how RxJava makes it very simple for you to do work on background threads so that this doesn't happen and you don't freeze the UI. So that's why the seek bar is there. It's just there so that I can show you, I can interact with the UI and that it's not freezing. And now let's go into main activity. And here is where I'm going to write the example. All right, so the first step in this process is actually creating, make sure you get the right library, creating an observable object. So make sure you get the io.reactivex import. That's the one that we need. And it's going to be an observable object of task type. So first, this is probably going to be a little bit misleading because we're going to be using a data set, a list of task objects, but the observable is of type task. And this is kind of a weird concept because it is a list, but it looks like it's a single object. But anyway, just don't worry about that, and we're just going to kind of carry on here. So I'm going to name it task observable, and I'm going to set it equal to observable, and then we can reference some static methods from the Rx library. So I'm going to go from iterable, because remember, we want to take a list. So this from iterable method is known as an operator. That's kind of, it's a big part of Rx, the library, is all the really great operators that they have to make things easier. So I'm going to reference that data source class that I talked about and go create tasks list. So when the from iterable operator basically will take a list of objects and turn it into an observable. And once again, don't worry. I'm sure you don't know what these operators are. I'm sure there was a whole bunch that came up, but just don't worry about it. This is just an example to show you the overall process of what all these Rx transactions do, because they're almost all, very similar. So next we want to tell it where the work is going to be done. So we want to essentially specify a worker thread. So I want to go subscribe on, and then this is where we can reference that scheduler that I talked about. I think it was in the previous video. So I can go schedulers.io. This is unique to RxAndroid. This is kind of that threading assistance that I mentioned. So I'm telling it, I want anybody who wants to see the results of this to subscribe on this thread. So you're telling it what thread to do the work on. Next, I want to tell it which thread to observe on. So I'm writing observe on. I'm going Android schedulers.main thread. And of course, this is also unique to the, actually, you know what? I'm not sure if schedulers.io is unique to the Android, RxAndroid library. I think maybe only Android schedulers is unique to the RxAndroid library. That references the main thread, of course. And so that's our observable. We've created a observable from a list of tasks and specified where the work is going to be done and where the results are going to be observed from. So now I'm going to go over kind of a bunch of different examples to show you what it's like to do work on the background thread, why it's good to do the work on the background thread, and kind of returning a result to the main thread. So I'm going to go task observable.subscribe, and I'm going to write new observer. So I'm creating an observer that's subscribing to the observable, and just clicking enter and letting the autocomplete do the work here. So the onSubscribe method will be called as soon as the observable is subscribed to. So I'm just writing a log output there. The onNext method will be called as the observer iterates through the observables. So remember, we passed a list of task objects, so there's going to be a whole bunch of them. So this onNext method is going to be called a bunch of times, basically. So first of all, I'm going to write thread.currentThread.getName, so you can see the name of the thread as that method's called. And then I'm going to print out the description of that task. So task.getDescription, because it's going to iterate through all the tasks from the data source here. Next, I'm going to write the onError method. So I'm just going to write log e and just pass the error. That's going to get called if something goes wrong during the process at all. And then onComplete, so log d, and I'm just going to write called, and that obviously is going to be called when the process is complete. So this is it basically. This will subscribe an observer, do the work on a background thread, where this observer will then observe the results from this action that's being done here. So I could run this right now and we could see what's happening, but I don't know if this is going to really show the big picture of what's happening here. So actually, no, I will show you this first, and then we'll move on, and I'm going to show you kind of what the different threading options can do. All right, so there is our log output, and then we have just that print. It says onNext main, so it's telling us what thread it's being posted to, which is the main thread. Then there's that description, and so on. So not very exciting, not much going on here. We have our seek bar that shows pretty much immediately, and we can do stuff to it. But watch what happens if I was to do thread.sleep, and just sleep the thread for, I don't know, just 1 second after each iteration. I got to surround this in a try catch, just pressing Alt Enter, surrounding try catch. Now watch what happens when I run this again. And I bring up the emulator here. So as soon as the app launches, notice that I'm not going to be able to see the seek bar. It's not on the screen. And that's because this is being done on the main thread. So the UI is freezing basically. So now the seek bar comes up because 5 seconds has elapsed and all the tasks are posted. So that's a problem. Obviously, you don't want anything to freeze the UI in any situation. But so watch now when I do something else. So I'm going to write subscribe on, and I'm going to write a filter. This is another operator. I guess it's technically called an operator, yeah. Once again, don't worry if you don't know where any of these are coming from. I'm writing new predicate, which is a test, and I only want to show the tasks that are complete. So if the task is complete, then it will get sent to the whatever observers are observing. Now watch what I'm going to take this, cut that out. I'm going to paste it in here, And I'm also going to write a log output that prints the thread name. So thread.currentThread.getName. So what's happening here is I'm going to freeze the thread just like I did before, but I'm freezing it on a background thread because this is where the work is being done. The work is being done on a background thread, which is where this filter is doing that work. Then the observers are just observing on the main thread where nothing's being frozen, nothing's being slept, so it should be all good. So I'm going to run this and we'll take a look. So I have the app on the screen once again. Notice right away the UI is fine and I can play with the seek bar and we have those results coming in. So the work is being done on a background thread. I'm sleeping it on a background thread, so there's no issues on the UI. And if we take a look at the log, you can see that it's printing out the name of that background thread that's being used, and it's printing out the name of the main thread, which is where the onNext method is being called. So that's it for this video. I just kind of wanted to show you the overall process of what all these Rx transactions look like. They basically all follow the same kind of pattern. You know, it's create an observable, use an operator, subscribe on a thread, so tell it what thread to do the work on, apply another operator if you want. In this case, we applied a filter to it, then describe where you want to observe on, so which thread you want to observe on, and then subscribe observers, which will then view the results on the thread that you designated as the observe thread. And that's just kind of the overall process of what all of these follow. And so hopefully now you have an idea of kind of what observables are, what observers are, and how to use them.